your guide to the truth. TheNewAmericanMedia.com.
Broadcasting to you live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles, if we're going to go ahead and get specific right about now. Thank you very much for joining us here. Brian Engelman, your host, Agree to Disagree, the show, TNAM Radio Network, the institution, the homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. Want you to check that out on the right-hand side especially. There's 3 things to be aware of. TNAM Radio link. That's where you click play to listen live. Underneath that is our Facebook feed and our Twitter feed. On Twitter, we're at American_media_. And you can do a search for The New American Media on Facebook and like the page. Also, finally, make sure that you subscribe and join the conversation on YouTube, youtube.com/The New American Media. Subscribe, join the conversations, because really we continue this stuff. We like to have conversations about interesting subject matter and trivial bread and circus subject matter, because it's NBA playoff season. You can check out our NBA playoff preview show with Zach Barris. He's the maestro of triviality, if we're talking bread and circuses, because he's a former NBA scout. Just did a show there. We'll post it soon. And also, we brought in John Correa, somebody who I think Marc Clair should have on the show. I don't know if he gives a damn or not, but we'll find out in a moment. But John runs this site called Active Self-Protection, Cover Your ASP, ASP. And it basically takes all these surveillance footage, different news stories, shows you these really bad things that happens and walks you through what could have went differently, how you could have protected yourself better. It's all about protecting yourself. It's active self-protection. I watched this shocking video. Yes, these 5 simple tricks will lose your belly fat. All those stupid ads at the bottom of the websites that you look at. This superfood has doctors stunned. Sure it does. Yeah, I'm sure. I can't wait to click on. But this really was a shocking video. It was a bunch of people in the park. It looks like NYPD, or in New York. They were dressed up as clowns, and they had people in on the act, and they were covered in blood, what looked like blood, and they were swinging axes and screaming, and people were crumpling down and freaking everybody in the park out. And they went up on this guy, and he pulled out his gun, and he aimed it at him, and they took their masks off. They're like, no, don't shoot, it's a prank. And I was like, holy crap, this is going to get people killed. This will get people killed if these YouTube air quote stars want to, do outrageous, shocking videos for clicks and a couple of bucks and some notoriety. Like, it's beyond stupid. It will get people killed, and it's going to put, all of us that want to protect ourselves with our Second Amendment rights in a very bad situation where you have to think now, could this be a prank or is this legitimate? So I brought in an expert. Check out that show as well. But for now, we're going to welcome Marc Clair to the program. He is the purveyor. He is the head honcho. He is the brains and driving force behind lionsofliberty.com. He has been on our show before, and we wanted to bring him back now because it's been far too long since he's been a guest. Marc, how are you doing today, sir?
Living the dream, I believe, is the phrase.
You got it, buddy. I love when people throw that back at me. That's hilarious. I love it.
I gotta.
That's when you know that you're really making a difference in the world, Marc.
Exactly.
When someone uses your goofy catchphrase against you. Exactly.
You're making me repeat your phrases, so that's impactful.
Exactly. Just like Keynesian, and just like, what are some other good liberty buzzwords that you have learned in the past decade that you like using, that you've picked up on, and now other people are using?
Liberty buzzwords, yikes.
I know. I just thought of that off the top of my head. Go figure.
I don't know. I kind of try to steer away from a lot of the buzzwords nowadays. I mean, a lot of the common ones are statist and stuff like that.
That's everywhere.
You used to hear a lot of the waking people up is a phrase you'll hear a lot. But I try to steer away from that stuff because the more I kind of learn, and not just about my own philosophy or about what a philosophy of liberty should be, but I learned about communication and learn better ways to communicate. And I think a lot of the buzzwords can tend to turn people off because they're either insider jokes, or not even jokes, but just insider lingo that only other libertarian type people are going to understand, or they're just divisive and will just kind of push away and confuse people. I mean, if you just want to call someone a statist, then they might just go, okay, dude, whatever, and not really listen to what you're saying. So I don't know. There's a lot of buzzwords out there, but I generally try to steer clear from a lot of them.
Well, contrary to how things go on other platforms, I know sometimes it would be my time now to read through your bio and explain what you're up to and tell them how they can get connected at the end of the show.
My bio's not very interesting.
Well, make something up off the top of your head. For people that may be listening to you for the first time or, kind of forgot since I forget last time you've been on, but you've been on a few times. Remind people what you're up to, what the point is over at Lions of Liberty, the best ways to stay in contact, and some things that you have on the radar that are coming up they can look forward to.
Well, that's a lot to wrap up there. But, basically, just to give up some nation for anyone who's not familiar with lionsofliberty.com, the 3 people out there that still haven't found our website.
Those statists. We need to wake them up. Let's wake them up.
Yeah, the 3 sadists out there that I need to wake up by coming to Lions of Liberty. But no, basically it started really over a decade ago when I was in college at Penn State, and I made a few good friends, a lot of good friends there. And a few of those friends I happened to come back into contact with later on in my adult life. And we sort of came together in several ways. I mean, Brian McWilliams, who he's out here in LA as well. Yep. We were friends, as soon as I moved back out here. But at some point, the political conversation started to come up again, or not even again for the first time. I don't think we really even talked about that stuff too much in our college days. But when Ron Paul ran for president in 2007, I was a big fan of his for years, actually, because a good friend of mine, Howie Snowden, who makes regular appearances on our podcast now as well, he used to be a congressional page for Ron Paul back when he was in high school. Not for Ron Paul, for somebody else, but he would go around and talk to different congressmen. Some of them were nice, some of them whatever, but there was this one guy that really stood out to him named Ron Paul. So he was just raving about this guy, telling me all about him. Kind of sent me to his weekly column, Texas Straight Talk, and I started reading that. And it's the first time I really even started thinking deeply about politics at all. I'd say at that point, I used to sit in the car with my dad, and he used to have, AM radio on, all the talk radio. He was a big Rush Limbaugh guy. My parents were, I'd say, small government type conservatives, I guess, to put it in a sort of a palatable way for most people and current political dialogue, I guess. So I had some of those ideas early on, but I didn't really have a philosophy behind it. It was just, that's what I heard my parents saying. So it seemed to make sense. Yeah, small government. That sounds good. But it wasn't only until later on when I really started to look into a lot of these issues on my own. I think 9/11 obviously was a big moment for all of us. And I think that was the first moment that politics became something more than just a thing to talk about. It was more than just a dinner table conversation or something to talk about over drinks for fun. It was real life. It was a real thing, and the consequences of which often result in tragedy and death for many people. So it's important to get a lot of the right ideas about this kind of stuff. And just, I think just reading Ron Paul and seeing a lot of the clarity he brought to a lot of issues, even when I don't necessarily agree with them, he approaches things, or still does approach things from a principled standpoint, or at least attempts to do so in a way that you just didn't see from the standard talking heads, from your typical congressman or your typical presidential candidate. So his campaign really got us talking about politics again. Came back and got back in touch with John Odermatt, who you know as well, when he was out here for a brief stint, and our other friend Dom, and the 4 of us. There was really a broader group of us that started talking about politics that used to be friends. We formed this kind of email chain called the Liberty Chain, where we would just kind of shoot ideas back and forth, and we would write basically blog posts to each other about different issues. And at some point that led to us actually creating a blog, because we were doing all this, talking about all this stuff anyway. So it made sense to just sort of put it out there on the old interwebs and let people find it. And that blog eventually evolved into what you see today over at lionsofliberty.com, where we have daily articles. We have the Morning Roar every morning. It's our daily feature where we try to look at a news story that you might not be seeing in the mainstream media, or maybe you are seeing it, but we're going to try to give you our Liberty perspective on it. We also have several different features. We're doing a weekly column. Brian is doing a weekly column analyzing Rand Paul. He's a guy who's seen as sort of the most libertarian candidate, I guess you would say. It probably will be the most libertarian candidate that we see running outside of, at least in the 2 main parties, outside of the Libertarian Party. So he has a weekly column analyzing his statements, his actions, again, through that liberty viewpoint. Second Amendment Watch, Felony Friday. We have all sorts of different features where we try to focus on issues that affect individual liberty. And then, of course, we have the Lions of Liberty podcast, which I host twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. You can find that at lionsofliberty.com. You can find it on iTunes, Stitcher Radio. Airs on a couple Liberty streaming stations as well, so you can really find it anywhere. Was that enough of a summary of what I'm doing?
Did we get your Twitter? Did we get your Twitter
Oh,
handle?
didn't get the Twitter.
Son of a... Seriously? Come on, rookie.
At Lions of Liberty. You can also talk to us at Lions of Liberty. Also on Facebook, facebook.com/Lions of Liberty. We also have the Facebook forum now, too. So if you find the Lions of Liberty forum, you can actually get in and interact with us, talk about our articles, ask questions for guests, and that kind of thing, too. So no URL for that because it's like facebook.com/AUGC.
Yeah, mine did the same because they wanted my cell phone number. I'm like, screw you. You got everything else. Come on. I don't. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. I'd say do a search for The New American Media with spaces in between, and then like the page, or find it off of our homepage. You click it and do it right there. You said something interesting there.
I hope I said at least one thing interesting. That's always my goal when I talk. If I can say one interesting thing in like an hour, then I'm good.
You said you mentioned what your parents grew up talking about. Because it's very interesting because I'm learning about this. Belief bias, I believe is the phrase, and I'm so learning about it that I need to like properly define it and properly articulate it. But I was listening to a Coast to Coast episode that was really interesting, and it was talking about the belief bias of when something happens, you see what you expect to see based on your personal experiences. You might see a black person and a white person who observe the Eric Garner or the Mike Brown situation. And based upon the things they think that they should see, or based on, their personal experiences or whatever, there's like an inherent bias in how you take in the same exact information with the same exact stimuli. That's why they say like eyewitness testimony is so unreliable when it comes to like car crashes. It's like, everybody, the blue car went running through there. That was a green car and a white car. There was no blue car. Oh, okay. But
I'm a fan of blue cars, so I expected to see a blue car.
Actually a blue car, I told the story when the three loose pit bulls triangulated and almost attacked me and my neighbor, but somebody in a blue car stopped and kind of whistled and distracted them, and I'm forever thankful to that random blue car, actually. So
that's all it took was a whistle?
A whistle. It was like a whistle clap. Yeah. No, but you were talking about what your parents, what they talked about, and that kind of seemed like the right thing. But I mean, for all of us, it's kind of we're raised however we're raised, and we have that mindset. Either it is religious or it's not, or spiritual or not, however it's defined. And then, once we're done with our parents spoon-feeding us what they want us to think, then we go on our own journey. Then we take our own path of enlightenment or just seeking truth and challenging dogma and having fun like we try to do. But that is interesting. I grew up the same way. It was very, at least from my dad's perspective, it was small government. My mom maybe from a different point of view, but that's where I was at. But then you get out in the real world, and then you realize you have to be a big boy, and you're dealing with health insurance, and you're dealing with you're watching these wars, and you're seeing friends in your military entering the military, and you hear stories people dying and people's brothers and sisters not coming back, and then it's like the real world starts to hit you, and then you kind of step back and reevaluate what's going on. And for me, I've always been socially libertarian, Mark. I usually, for the most part, don't care what people are doing, as long as they're not going to try to force me to do what they're into. And I think that was one of the main topics that it just keeps coming up, and it's something we had planned on talking about today, is medical marijuana. I don't know if you like to call it legalization or decriminalization, but this is something I've been meaning to have like a really big episode on this for a while. But I know you guys.
I'm your guy, man, because that's all we've been writing about this week. It seems like at Lions of Liberty.
Exactly, and that's why I wanted to kind of start with that with you, because it is a liberty issue. If you're not harming somebody else, what is the reason for doing this? Well, what about the drug cartels? What about the medicinal benefits? What about just butt out and mind your own business? If you're going to have your glass of wine and that person's going to have their martini and she's going to have her Xanax, why do you care if they take a hit off of a bowl? So there are so many angles here, Mark. I just kind of want to toss it over to you and kind of walk us through what you guys are discussing on your website at Lions of Liberty about this.
Sure, and I'm glad you brought up that question of whether it's legalization or decriminalization. Obviously, in some ways, you'll take whatever you can get, but there is a distinction to be made there. And legalization essentially means that the state, whatever state government we're talking about, because that's where these movements are taking place, not as much at the federal level, although there is now a movement at the federal level to decriminalize medical marijuana. But legalization basically means it's creating a state scheme to regulate marijuana in whatever, to regulate and tax marijuana in whatever way that state may see fit. And in already you're seeing these cronies just trying to get into some of these states and get control over the marijuana industry. Over in your state of Ohio, there is actually a group that is, John Utterman wrote about this a few weeks ago. It's a group that is trying to basically pass a medical marijuana legalization bill. But basically the catch is that this particular bill, there's actually two bills and two opposing groups. But this one group is basically trying to cartelize the entire medical marijuana industry for themselves. Basically, it's I'm trying to remember the name of it. I'm just trying to look it up real quick. It's called Responsible Ohio is the name of this wealthy investment group, and they're basically
that sounds good. Responsible. I'm in.
Doesn't it?
Like the Patriot Act. Oh, that's great. I'm a patriot. I'm responsible. Good.
It sounds great on the surface. Yeah, we're in Ohio. We like responsibility, so that's fantastic. But these guys have spent $40 million to craft this bill and to push this bill. And basically it would hand the exclusive rights to grow marijuana to basically this one group in Ohio. So while it's good that there would now be medical marijuana legally available to people in the state of Ohio if this goes through, the problem is now you're really just now we're talking about basically a fascist system, a crony capitalist system where, it's legal, but now this one group gets to control the entire industry in that state. So there's this positive of, part of the idea behind it is decriminalizing it in a way, but at the same time, you're establishing this crony capitalist system where this one group gets to control it, and that's a whole other problem in and of itself. I mean, ideally, in the ideal world, I guess, which is always what we're shooting for, or at least what we need to lay out there, is that drugs like marijuana or substances at all would just simply be decriminalized, meaning that, you're just not going to go to jail for having them. And that's it. I don't think you necessarily need a whole regulatory scheme, but, that's actually one of the ways that medical marijuana bills are being passed and sold to people because, a lot of people don't have the same mentality that I might do. They actually think their state government should get as much money as possible for various things. So when they see, legal marijuana, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, no, I'm just saying when they a lot of these people aren't getting sold as much on the individual rights aspect, on the philosophy aspect, on the idea that people should not be violently assaulted for owning a substance. A lot of them are getting sold on the fact, hey, the state can get more revenue and it can go to education and it can go to this and that. And look, I'll take whatever we can get. But
so are the teachers' unions now at some point going to adopt this because then they can work some huge, more kill the goose that laid the golden egg contracts with the politicians that are bought and sold for by the teachers' unions, so they can take that marijuana money and then put it back into their own pockets, and it's for the children, save the children, oh my Lord. Because I want to legalize, decriminalize, all that stuff, bring it back, that's how it used to be in this country for a while, don't forget. Not you, but the general listener that doesn't pay attention to this issue. It used to be that way, but just saying that you don't want it to be illegal and you think that it's empowering the drug cartels and making violent, look at the rum runners. It just made Al Capone and it just all sorts of violence and craziness. That doesn't mean I want people to sit around and be high and unproductive all day any more than I want someone to drink a fifth of Jack Daniels every day. Like, that's just ludicrous, It just seems like there's got to be a better way. And the legalization versus decriminalization. Do you think most of these groups that are pushing this, they're really just trying to corner the market, like a Budweiser, and then try to push out the craft breweries and try to get them to enact legislation where you have to have so many protocol and you have to have your facilities tested so much and pay for all this overhead and government bureaucracy that nobody can compete with you, like you kind of rigging the system, setting it up to fail? Do you think most of that's what's behind a lot of these groups?
I think that it's very obvious to anyone surveying the political landscape over the last 10, 15, 20 years that marijuana is becoming legal. It's going to become legal everywhere.
Like gay marriage,
eventually.
I guess, right?
maybe there will be some back holes in Arkansas where it's still illegal. I don't know, but that is generally the way that the winds are shifting. And as those winds shift, there are going to be some people with their noses in the air detecting this, and they might be pro-pot. They might not really care about pot, but they are powerful and do care about increasing their power and making more money, and those people might see an opportunity to get into the industry and get into things. And if they're going to do that, well, hey, we may as well do it so it benefits them as well. So I think you're going to see that in almost every state where this stuff happens. You're going to see attempts to cartelize the industry. And speaking of this Ohio thing, since I mentioned Responsible Ohio, they have the effort that I'm not as big a fan of. There is another group out there that I want to point out called Responsible Ohioans for Cannabis, and their proposal is much different. It would not cartelize the industry. It would simply make it legal for anyone over the age of 18 to produce, cultivate, possess, transport, distribute, consume, whatever, as much marijuana as they please. Now, that is a much more, I guess you would say, libertarian proposal, as far as I'm concerned, where it simply stops it basically just decriminalizes it, as you said, where whenever we hear legalize, it usually means we're going to create some sort of legal scheme involving regulations, taxation, perhaps giving certain groups the right to grow marijuana and that kind of thing. So if I've given the choice, I'm always going to lean towards decriminalization and just simply taking our hands off instead of putting hands in new inventive ways. But at the same time, it's hard not to support something that, even if there is a crony aspect to it, that would result in less people being arrested for just owning these things too. So I don't want to say I'm completely against the other proposals, but I mean there's some poison pills that go along with them.
Interesting, because you look at some of these, it's going to become one of these hot button issues. It just has to, because you look at what we don't have time today because we're going to have to we're going to have to shorten today's show a little bit from what we normally do. We tend to ramble for hours. But Gary Johnson, I've had him on the show and I haven't had him on for a while, so I'll probably bring him back in a little bit here. He's running for the 2016 bid. I pulled up this article. It's from a little while ago, but he, named CEO of Cannabis Sativa Inc., producing lozenges and creams in states like Colorado where the drug can be legally bought and sold. You have a lot of presidential candidates, a lot of the hopefuls. They're going to get asked this question. Remember Bill Clinton's, "I did, but I didn't inhale." Okay, pal. What a clown. Anyone that believes anything coming out of a Clinton's mouth, for another day. But where do all the candidates stand as far as you can tell so far? I think, would you say the two biggest people that have come out and given, three candidates with the three strongest opinions might be Christie, Rand Paul, and Gary Johnson on this issue?
Yes, I would say that's accurate, although Christie has not announced his candidacy yet.
That's fair, right.
It's suspected that he might be doing so we will see.
Okay, but Christie came out and had some pretty blunt... and that's what he's known for, is being really blunt. People love him for it, and they hate him for it.
No pun intended, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
Man, I didn't even catch that. Kudos, good sir. Kudos. That was awesome.
I'm pretty good at detecting weed puns.
That was your one interesting moment of the interview. Thank you. Good
All
night.
right.
We'll see you
You
later.
got it.
Check out his
Good
site,
luck.
whatever it is.
Locked it in, yeah. Find me on Twitter somewhere.
Somewhere. Look it up.
I actually wrote about this today. It's an interesting dichotomy going on. It's in the Morning Roar. And that's our daily article, as I said. And this is I'm basically comparing the shifting positions of two different people. One of them is Christie, as we just discussed. One of them is Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who I'm sure you're familiar with from CNN. Now,
yes,
Mr. Gupta has produced not one, not two, but three documentaries on medical marijuana that have aired on CNN. Actually, the third one has not aired yet. It's airing this Sunday.
So you mean nobody's seen it?
I'm sure somebody's seen it. I'm sure some executives at CNN have seen it, but it has not been released to the general public yet. The latest one. Was that a pun? Did I miss a joke there?
No, I was just saying that CNN's ratings are crap unless a plane crashed.
Oh, I totally did miss a joke.
It's all right. I got you back.
So no one has seen it. No, the first two did pretty well, actually, and the next one is called Weed 3, The Marijuana Revolution. And I'm particularly interested in seeing this one because it's going to focus largely on the efforts of MAPS. Are you familiar with this organization called MAPS? It's the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. I did a recent interview on the Lions of Liberty podcast with a representative from that organization, and basically they are doing legal research into how things like LSD, ayahuasca, and medical marijuana, which is considered a psychedelic, can help people with mental disorders, specifically PTSD is one of the big ones, general depression, and that kind of thing. And they're doing a lot of great research. But and this documentary is going to focus on their work a lot, which I'm happy about. Any way to get them more attention is fantastic. Yeah, go ahead. I heard that pre-interruption prep.
Yeah, man, you were like super senses today.
I'm like Daredevil.
You're oblivious on 20% of these things that I got to make the CNN jokes clear, but on the others, it's like you picked up on my sniffle of.
It's a weird thing, huh?
Yeah,
I'll miss the obvious jokes, but I can hear your intention.
Well, I was just gonna say I was wondering if you've had the chance to talk with Amber Lyon yet. We had a chance to talk with her.
I did try to get her on the show, so maybe you can hook me up afterwards.
Yeah, and I love this. I love this new media that we're all starting to get to know each other, and as we move forward, we're all going to know each other. And oh, by the way, I'll get to Amber Lyon in a second, but this is good. I want you to tell people about this. You have now been you have now scheduled an upcoming appearance on a certain program with a buddy of mine. He's been on our shows for several years now. Go figure. Years and years of shows with this guy. And now you, Marc Clair of Lions of Liberty, are going to be doing this. I want you to pimp this appearance. Tell people what you just booked this week. It's pretty cool.
Okay, well, I can't pimp the actual date yet, so we'll have to, because I have to nail that down still. But that's on my end. They're ready to book me tomorrow. But yeah, I'm going to appear on Caravan to Midnight with your good friend John B. Wells for a 2-hour interview. So that should be exciting.
Heck yeah. Very exciting stuff. But
I would say I don't know if I've ever talked for 2 hours straight, but that's not true. I know better. I've done that many times, just not on the air.
Hey, first time for everything. I think they're commercial breaks. You should have a chance to anyway. But no, that's very cool, and it is a subscription service. So if you haven't checked out Caravan to Midnight, maybe buy a month if you don't want to do the full year. Just sign up for a month of it.
Buy a month just to hear me.
Just to hear Marc Clair, would ya? But I mean, that's my point. It's like we're all starting to get to know each other. Everybody in new media who has strong opinions. We want to see this world a better place, and we're not going to sit by and wait for somebody else to do it. A lot of us are starting to lock arm in arm, and it's like, I don't need to love you. I don't need to be 100% on board with everything you have to say. If you can crack 65, 75% of the stuff, you're at least rational, and we can agree to disagree. But it's like, if we're moving in the right direction, you're a teammate, not an enemy. And that's the thing I like about this movement, and I'm really trying to make sure that, all of the personal beefs and grievances that you run into in business and just, general daily activities, your work environment, whatever. It's like, I want to keep that stuff so far away from the liberty movement and the new media, the new American media. It's just great when all my buddies start linking up and we start cross-referencing, and everybody's been on everybody else's program, and it's just great to see. But yeah, I mean, that was my point with Amber Lyon. We did a United We Stand festival with Dan Johnson and Ben Swan and all these guys. I think Gary Johnson was supposed to participate in a way, but I digress. But yeah, Amber Lyon, she's somebody that's studying this a lot, and that MAPS group sounds very interesting because my background's in psychology, and probably my most interesting course was cognitive neuroscience, which was way above my pay grade. That was a very intense class, but I learned a lot. I think we need to research these things. I think we need to research into psychedelics. I know Joe Rogan talks about the mushrooms and the ayahuasca and all these things. It's a part of the human experience, but politicians, rulers, and leaders think that they can put their spin on this and just kind of clamp down, put handcuffs on us and say, nah, you're not allowed to go do these things. Well, why not? If it's not harming somebody else, it's my experience. You don't get to tell me how I can live. So anyway, that was the sigh. I was like, and I wrote it down. I'm like, tell him that he should talk with Amber Lyon. So she's already on your radar. That's good. But
yeah, she's definitely on my radar. I've heard a few interviews with her, seen a lot of her stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so you're saying that, do you see psychedelics moving in that direction as well for just testing or following with marijuana, or you see them as very different things?
Well, I mean, for me, I think the public perspective is very different. I think marijuana in many ways is the easiest case to make because it's so obviously, not very harmful and so obviously very beneficial, especially when you relate it to things that are legal or illegal, such as, Viagra. I learned, I never heard this before, But Viagra, I learned this on my last interview, which aired yesterday, with a guy named Michael Minardi. He is a attorney in Florida who specializes in helping clients who are arrested for medical marijuana, or who are using medical marijuana and they're arrested for it. Because Florida has no medical marijuana provisions whatsoever. Marijuana is straight up illegal, but there are people that still use it for medical purposes. And he defends people like that in Florida. So he's a great guy. And that's Lions of Liberty, episode number 97. If anyone's interested in checking it out, you can find us on iTunes. But yeah, he basically, we were talking about this stuff, and he mentioned how Viagra has been linked to 2,500 deaths. Viagra. Now, this is a completely legal, FDA-approved drug. I mean, you can argue people might need it for medical reasons if they can't make things happen on their own. But at the end of the day, this is a recreational drug. Let's be honest about it. It's not saving anyone's life to take Viagra. If anything, it might be allowing people to create life.
Yes, it's a life creator, not a life saver.
Sure, but it's still, at the end of the day, I don't think you can classify it as the same as something that's actually providing a true medical benefit to someone. I mean, I don't care if people take it. I think people should be able to take whatever they want. But the point is, this is a legal, FDA-approved drug that has been absolutely linked to many deaths. Whereas marijuana is not FDA-approved. It's actually a Schedule I drug linked to 0 deaths. And so the hypocrisy is profound when it comes to marijuana. It's just it's a very easy case. There are many, many, many documented medical benefits of it. And you know who actually recognizes the medical benefits of marijuana? The federal government. Sort of. Because they classify marijuana as a Schedule I drug.
I like that comma ... Sort of.
I like to put my dots in my speech as well.
Well, make the differentiation for us. What was the tweak there at the end?
So marijuana is a Schedule I drug, and that means that it has no medical use. That's what Schedule I means, and that's how the federal government classifies it. However, the federal government does a couple things that seem to counter that philosophy. One, did you know that the University of Missouri grows marijuana for the federal government for research purposes?
Of course. No, I didn't know exactly, but
yeah, they do that. And there was a program. I think it started in the 70s, and I think it only applied to only 7 people got through it. But 2 of those people are still alive, and those 2 people still to this day receive weekly shipments of marijuana from the federal government directly.
Wait, they're still alive? You mean the weed didn't kill them?
Yeah, so somehow the weed didn't kill them, and the other ones didn't die from the weed either. Somehow, for the record.
That's it. Somehow.
These were already very sick people when they started this program, and so they're getting So they're getting this marijuana from the federal government. The same federal government that's growing marijuana for its own research purposes, the same federal government that holds a patent on using marijuana for medical purposes. So if the federal government clearly is recognizing this medical use by its own actions, at the same time is classifying marijuana as having no medical use whatsoever. So there's a very clear hypocrisy going on in the laws and the regulations regarding marijuana.
Now, as I was saying, drugs are bad. You shouldn't do drugs. If you do them, you're bad, because drugs are bad, okay? It's a bad thing to do drugs, so don't be bad by doing drugs, okay? That'd be bad.
And that's pretty much the gist.
That is the DARE message.
Yeah, dare to be stupid. Wasn't that a Weird Al song? Dare to be stupid. Wow,
dare to be stupid.
That goes back to the 80s. Jeez. But that's kind of pretty much what the government and the air quote leaders, that's been the line for so long. It's just drugs are bad. Okay, here's your brain on drugs. Yeah, don't crack your eggs in a bad. That's bad. But alcohol's not good, and all these pharmaceuticals. I mean, the fact that the corporations. We could name them. And by the way, when I named Budweiser earlier, I'm not specifically saying Budweiser limits their competition and does underhanded things. For the record, I want to clarify that because they have the bank account to sue me, and I don't mean to slander or libel. But what I do mean is that with the pharmaceutical companies, there are so many side effects. I mean, it's cliche at this point to laugh and point out all of the side effects may include death, vomiting after death, and then you're just like, why would anyone take this? If that's the risk, just live with the foot odor. Or what, you have dry mouth, so take this thing that could abort your baby. It's like, oh my God, why would you do these things? I don't understand the hypocrisy of banning it on one side and then fully endorsing it on the other. I mean, if it just comes down to money, where is the benefit to keeping weed illegal? Is it in the cartels and the covert black ops and the DEA running all this secret money to be funneled and used for all these covert operations? Seriously, like, where is the financial benefit to this, Mark?
Well, in many ways, it's the realm of conspiracy to kind of go into it and figure out exactly why the laws are the way they are. But, and we recently wrote about this earlier or I guess last year. It's 2015 now, isn't it? Wow. Time just flies, but I
can't believe we're halfway through April of 2015. It's insane.
We wrote an article. Wow, this is a lot of views now. I didn't realize this. Over 1,000 likes on Facebook. That's pretty good. That's blowing up. So yeah, this article blew up of ours. And this is an article where we basically break down two different groups that are unhappy with the marijuana legalization movement. And those two groups, one of them is the drug cartels. They are not thrilled at all with what's going on. Farmers, the price to pay farmers for growing marijuana in Mexico has dropped from about $100 per kilo to $25 per kilo since the legalization movement has really picked off in the U.S. So their profits are plummeting. I mean, if something's legal in the U.S., why do you need to worry about someone smuggling it in from Mexico? You don't. I mean, this is the U.S. is the biggest market for this stuff. So that market is the demand's not deteriorating, but the supply is coming from within the United States and coming legally. So the demand for black market cannabis has plummeted completely. And obviously, drug cartels are upset by this because that's their whole business model is based around the fact that these things are illegal. They need them illegal. If they're legal, well, they're just another guy selling it just like anybody else. But when it's legal, almost anyone can grow it anyway. So you don't really need these massive selling operations necessarily. I'm sure there will be, a lot of legal marijuana farms and that kind of thing. But the other group that is unhappy with this is the DEA.
No, it's not like they ever do anything untoward.
Yeah. So I mean I don't know how much.
No, I mean you did see their prostitution scandal, the latest DEA prostitution with the drug cartels
in Colombia, like living it up with some ladies of the evening, mujeres de la noche, as they say.
Yes, I say that all the time. I'm gonna start saying it, mujeres de la noche.
Yeah,
ladies.
But the problem here too is when it comes to funding for this stuff, the DEA gets about $2.7 billion a year for funding. Even though marijuana is not a big deal to most of us, and it's becoming more legal and people are viewing it in a more reasonable way, it still is the drug that the drug war is most focused on. 90% of the drug war activities are marijuana based because that's the drug that is used the most by far. So that is the drug that is targeted. So if you take away the DEA's ability to crack down on drug cartels, you take away the drug cartels anyway, you're taking away their reason to exist, because most of their reason to exist is marijuana. Even though they might talk about harder drugs and they bust people for cocaine shipments all the time too, but the vast majority of the resources deployed are towards marijuana. So when the quote unquote demand for the DEA to be busting people for marijuana dies, well, why do you need a DEA anymore? I mean, for the 10% left over that is, for cocaine and all that kind of bust. And I think even as we see marijuana becoming more legal and we see the world not ending when that happens, I think you're going to see people becoming a lot more open to just the decriminalization overall of drugs. That doesn't mean that other drugs are good. It doesn't mean people should be taking other drugs, but throwing them in jail isn't really helpful to somebody if they have a drug problem.
I think it's when somebody's drug problem causes them to start breaking into homes and robbing people at gunpoint. Look,
but it's not the drug problem. It's the person causing that.
Y'all
that
done
should be held responsible for those crimes.
Y'all done effed up at that point. Y'all done effed up. It's time for you to go away because you did commit that's when it becomes a real crime. That's why people have said, oh, well, what? It's a victimless crime to sell heroin, and heroin's been killing people around me left and right, more so in this past decade than I've ever heard in my entire lifetime. Once again, I'm not going to get into the opium thing with Afghanistan, although it's hard to not at least throw that in there as a footnote for you to do some research into. You, the listener, not Mark, because I'm sure he has done the research.
Wasn't the U.S. army like protecting the poppy fields at one point, or are we supposed to leave this for the readers, the listeners?
No, they can read, they can listen.
There was a thing though. I think it even aired on Fox News. It was like an interview where they were just a soldier was straight up saying how they just we're just protecting these poppy fields for these guys.
I've talked to soldiers that have come back, and that was their gig. And it was protecting the fields.
So we're paying soldiers to be in Afghanistan protecting poppy fields and opium fields while we deploy resources within the country to bust people for selling heroin, which comes from those very same opium
heroin,
fields.
Which
that
kills,
doesn't seem to make too much sense, does
heroin, which kills, whereas weed just gives you the munchies or makes you lethargic, perhaps. Yes, heroin that kills, and then you create the whole underground economy for the people to push this stuff around, and it can be violent, and it does lead to violence and extreme withdrawal. And yeah, it's that's that. Yeah, you kind of summed it up in the story there, and definitely if you lead with your foot saying, we should legalize all drugs, including heroin, because that's what the other side always does. The follow-up question is, so you're okay? You want to legalize all drugs? So you like heroin in the hands of children? And that's always the knee-jerk reaction. As soon as they get that first thing out, it's always on to the next one. And Christie, let's do a quick roundtable of the.
Kind of veered off, didn't we?
Yeah, it's all right. I got you back, bro. I'm steering this ship. He says I'm reading here from Lions of Liberty. This is on the link that you shared from rare.us. Christie says, quote, "I will crack down and not permit states to legalize marijuana." And then he ate the interviewer. No, just kidding. But he will crack down and not permit states to legalize marijuana. That's his stance. You got him, and you got Rand Paul, and you have Gary Johnson. You think this is an issue that is going to play well? Or is it just in the conservative base it still plays well? Is it similar to gay marriage, do you think? How do you see this issue impacting the 2016 election?
I think politicians that still try to cling to this are shooting themselves in the foot, and I think that they're not sensing the political winds shifting as much as they should be. And I think Chris, if this is a politically calculated move on his part, I think it's a poor calculation. I do think it is to cater to, he's been saying nice things about guns lately, and he's got a terrible record on guns. He's been doing good things on guns lately. He pardoned Shaneen Allen, who was, I'm sure you heard her case. She was a single mother who got a concealed carry permit in Pennsylvania, made the terrible mistake of wandering into the state of New Jersey, and when she was pulled over and asked if she had a weapon, she, as far as she knew, she owned it legally, and she was just trying to be honest with the officer and said, well, yes, I actually do have this weapon here in the car, and I have here's my license, here's my paperwork. She thought she was doing the right thing, and by revealing that, and that was a big mistake because she was arrested because you cannot carry guns in New Jersey. Basically, there are exceptions to that rule, but essentially you cannot carry a gun in New Jersey, period. She was pardoned recently after a bit of a legal battle, and Chris Christie did pardon her. So he's done good things, and I'll commend him when he does the good things. He also commuted the sentence of Brian Aitken. I don't know if you heard my interview with him. He has an amazing, terrible story, really, but he was arrested for transporting his legally owned guns from residence to residence in New Jersey, which is completely legal, but he still found himself arrested for it because a lot of the officers don't know the laws. So they see a gun, they arrest you because they think guns are illegal no matter what. And he went through a trial, and he went through a corrupt judge, a corrupt prosecutor, and the jury was lied to. They had information kept from them, and he got sentenced to 7 years in jail. And he luckily he only served, I believe, 10 months of those, or 8 months before his sentence was commuted by Chris Christie. So Chris Christie's done some good things on a case-by-case basis.
But he's presiding over a backward-ass state that doesn't recognize that guns are good.
No, not at all. Or it doesn't recognize just the rights of individuals.
Yeah, it's just insane that there are pockets of freedom in this country, and that there are pockets of absolute tyranny, that there are pockets of absolute unconstitutional behavior. The fact that anyone with our Second Amendment can try to pass legislation. There were laws on the books. There were statutes saying that blacks had to sit in the back of buses. Did that make it right? No, it's just kind of the way that things were done over there.
It's the law's the law. Then that's the attitude a lot of these
I was just doing my job, said the Nuremberg trials. I almost called it the Hindenburg trials. The Nuremberg trials. I was just doing my job. I was just following orders. Yeah. It's just we have a Second Amendment right to defend ourselves. Sorry, I'm all amped up on the Second Amendment with my interview with John Correa earlier. Well, I mean, I interviewed him about that killer clown prank, and it's like you never know where you're going to be, and something actually happens. There are nut jobs, there are bad guys, and hell, I mean, I don't understand this administration allowing our porous southern border. They're talking about ISIS camps right over on the other side, 8 miles away, and we're not even checking.
Thing, because I didn't read the article. I did see it.
That
feels like a Glenn Beck propaganda piece. I'm just saying. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that's my gut reaction to it. There might be an ISIS camp, right across the border. I don't know.
I can say that when you don't know who's coming in, and there are groups, whether those groups are being steered by the CIA or, shadow government or military-industrial complex, because you need a bad guy to fight. It's like you can't have a good wrestling match unless you have a bad guy. You need a heel.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a big wrestling fan. I forgot about that.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's right in your wheelhouse, bro.
We're right there now.
But you need a bad guy. You need a bad guy, and I know that ISIS is out there, and they do want to just blow things up and be complete nut jobs. There are absolute nut jobs, and we should screen for those people, and our president doesn't want that. And with Jade Helm 15 coming, I just really feel like this is going to be an interesting year, not a good year. But we'll see how it plays out. We'll get into that issue on the side. But back to wrestling now and politics. Do you think Jesse Ventura might throw his hat in the ring, talking about medical marijuana here? And
he did say something. He did say something about how he took the Libertarian Party's tests and it's like I don't know if it's what they call it, a purity test or something. Now it sounds like a Scientology thing, but I guess he said he took some survey from them, and he said he feels he's libertarian enough to run on the Libertarian Party because he got like a 75% or something, so he passed. I think so. He'll even admit he's not a libertarian fully, and that's okay if he admits that. And so many people have so many libertarians have different ideas about what libertarian is that I don't get stuck on the label too much. I just like to look at what people individually believe. And I love Jesse Ventura, man. I'm a huge wrestling fan, as we talked about. So I've been a fan of him outside of the political realm for years. He's one of the best wrestling commentators of all time. Heel commentators, since we're talking heels now. But yeah, Jesse's great. He says some wacky things. I don't agree with everything he says. He looks kind of nutty now. He kind of looks like Ron Paul if he lost all his hair and then grew the rest of his hair long. He's really starting to look a little wacky as he ages. But,
his tie-dyed shirts and his long gray ponytail and of course
it's an interesting look. He's
more Ted Kaczynski than Ted Cruz.
But overall, I've always admired him, and I do like him. I mean, the fact that he could be elected governor completely outside of that two-party system is crazy. I mean, hasn't really happened since then. I don't think. He definitely stands out as someone who he says what he thinks, and even when I disagree with him, I do get the sense that he's not a shill. At least he's a guy who's just out there being real, and that's so rare in politics that I'll take it, and I'll put him up there and disagree with him when I need to, and still enjoy him if he does campaign. It should be interesting if he does actually go for the Libertarian nomination, because Gary Johnson has already announced his intentions to run for the Libertarian Party nomination as well. So it should be interesting to see.
I would love to see Gary Johnson battle Jesse Ventura ideologically.
I'll take that debate, and I'll host that debate.
No. You and I will co-host. You ain't getting that. I'll let you in on it, but I can't.
Oh, you'll let
me
in now. Okay.
I can't give that.
Let's see how it is.
You and I are gonna wrestle for it. You and I will.
I was on the wrestling team in high school, so you might want to pause before you challenge me.
I played tennis. I was captain of my tennis team.
Yeah, I'm not intimidated.
Whatever. I played football on an undefeated team. I was a starting.
Can you defend against a single leg takedown? That's really the only thing that's gonna matter.
My elbows are strong. Boom! Right into.
You can't use elbows in an amateur wrestling.
I'm talking about a knockdown, drag out fight with Iran.
Okay.
We don't have time for rules when you're dealing with Iran. Come on.
What are you, Tom Cotton now?
Well, kinda. I don't like the concept of Iran having the nukes. But now we're getting off into the Israel thing, and that's gonna go.
Since we're talking about these guys, I should just plug something that doesn't exist yet. But I'm about to write a piece on. We are at Lions of Liberty. We are looking at every single person that if you announce for president, you're gonna get a Lions of Liberty article written about you eventually over these next few months.
Mark, I am running for president.
All right, I'm working on my.
I'm now 35. I can do it.
I just tossed my Marco Rubio notes in the trash bin. You're my next profile. No, but
Marco Rubio? Who?
I'm going to be doing an article soon. Maybe I'll start writing it today about Marco Rubio. He's, we're doing profiles on every presidential candidate, basically looking at the good, the bad, and then trying to analyze how their campaign would be for liberty, basically.
Where do you have? Who do you have ranked? Do you have Rand Paul number 1, Ted Cruz number 2?
We haven't really ranked them yet, but
no. I just mean you. Like nothing official, and this is subject to fluctuation. I'm not locking you in.
If we're just talking about guys that have announced so far, yeah. I mean, it's hard. I have my criticisms of Rand up and down, but at the end of the day, it's just night and day between him and everyone else. I mean, I don't think anyone is even close to him, unless we're including like Gary Johnson and them. But I mean, I'm just looking at the mainstream guys. He's definitely above and beyond the rest of them. It's not even close, really, when it comes to individual liberty. I guess you would have to call Ted Cruz number 2 because he does take some good positions on some things. He does take good positions on the Second Amendment. He's very strong when it comes to that. So he's ahead of Christie already, I guess, on that one by far. Although Christie's been nice to the Second Amendment verbally lately, but
as of late, right? Yeah, and I mean, I guess Hillary doesn't even get close to passing the smell test when it comes to this stuff with all the warmongering she's been doing over in Libya and.
Oh boy, the last thing I want to give to Hillary Clinton is a smell test. That's all I'm saying. You can quote me on that.
Did I just set myself up for that?
We're not really on air, right?
Did that just happen? I want to cleanse my ears. Can I just dunk my head into like a vat of hydrogen peroxide or clean?
You put it there for me. So.
Clorox bleach and just burn the pain away.
What was I gonna do?
I don't know. You were talking about Grandma Clinton. Oh,
you put a ball on a tee for me. I'm holding a bat. I mean, I didn't see any other alternative.
Okay, well, all right. Let me get back to this because I really think if let's just say this now. Why don't you and I both put in a joint bid to host a debate between Gary Johnson and Jesse Ventura, whether they announce for president or not. Maybe we should invite them both to do a joint conversation. Hope you didn't catch the pun. Joint. Get it? Ayo!
Nice one.
Okay, but I think we should. I think we should invite both of them on to do a point counterpoint, and
if they will each agree to smoke a joint before the debate, I'm totally in.
Otherwise you wouldn't want to talk to those two cats.
Because I'm going to. No, just kidding. Maybe.
Just kidding. I'm kidding. Sorry, I'm not sorry. So sorry. Okay,
I'm gonna say I'm kidding so many times that no one's gonna know what.
I always lie, and that's the truth.
There you go.
And then if that's the truth, then okay. But let me bring it back around to this because unfortunately we can't do the 2-hour episode that. Well, I think this conversation could go on for a long time.
Right.
I'm just so in favor of disarming the cartels, removing the financial incentive for people to be running this stuff, to be running drug houses out of neighborhoods, and you're bringing in the crackheads and the junkies. Send them to 7-Eleven, man. Just have a store, just like the drunks are, asking for your change and to get some booze. Do that stuff out of the neighborhoods. It does. If there's no incentive to come in and do that and fight over gang territory and turf so you can make your your thousands so that you can buy new fancy rims and whips and cars and bling and garbage, it's like just put that stuff at the liquor store. Sell the weed behind the counter, have your own shop, and just I don't know. I just don't want the bad guys in charge of this. That doesn't mean I'm super amped about everybody being stoned. It's a super important issue when it comes to liberty.
I don't think legal weed means everyone is stoned either. Just like legal heroin doesn't mean everyone's on heroin.
And legal booze doesn't mean I'm drunk right now.
It doesn't mean you're not.
It's
either.
just a coincidence.
It doesn't mean anything.
It's just a coincidence. No, but
means we're not going to toss you in jail for having some bottles of Jack Daniels in your house.
Yeah, see, now that's perfect because this is kind of the final question I had down here, and it's perhaps the most important one. And it's the main reason why I've wanted to have this show for a long time. Weed and guns. When you fill out paperwork, when you purchase a gun, when you apply for your concealed carry permit, when whatever it is, there are questions about marijuana on all of this paperwork. As if you have it, you cannot have your Second Amendment. It's one or the other. It's one or the other. There is nothing on there. Have you drank? Was your father an alcoholic? Did your grandfather ever hit One of your parents went in a drunken rage. Do you have alcoholic tendencies? Are you? When is the last time you've had a beer? Do you have any vodka in your home? There are no questions about alcohol, and I think anybody that's going to be intellectually honest will say drunks can get violent, potheads can get hungry. At a 90% something clip, it's more likely that people on weed will chill and people that are drunk will start fights. I've been a bartender, I've been a purveyor of mind-numbing intoxicants a long time. I see the difference. What do we do with weed and guns? How do those two things coexist when the federal government still hasn't legalized or decriminalized? There's so many different competing, legal in this state but not in that state. Colorado, come on in, have a brownie, go over to New Mexico, and boom, you're arrested. Just like Christie and his gun thing. It's weed and guns, Mark. I really don't hear anybody talking about this, but it's vitally important that we figure out on a national level what is the juncture there between weed and guns. What are we supposed to do with this?
Well, I don't know what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to just keep talking about what's right and wrong, and that's what we do. But hopefully, I mean, there are things the federal government could do. They could make. I actually believe there is a provision for people to carry legally owned guns from state to state, or at least in transport. But I mean, there should be laws that protect people like Shaneen Allen. On the base example, I mean, if you have a concealed carry permit, I mean, that should carry over. Maybe you can't carry it on the street, but if you're just driving through somewhere, or you're just driving through New Jersey, I mean, there should be some kind of federal protection. I mean, look, a lot of libertarians don't like anything the federal government does, but I think the federal government, if it's going to exist, the role of a federal government should be solely to defend the individual rights of its populace, including defending those rights from bad states, from the laws that are bad in states. And if a state law violates someone's rights, I think that is when it's an appropriate time for a federal government to step in and say, no, this is wrong. Now, we live in a world where the federal government is usually the one taking the wrong position on things, and sometimes states are, and sometimes states are trying to do the right thing, and usually the federal government comes in and says, no, you can't do legal marijuana. So it's in reality, it's happening the opposite way that it should. But ideally, you would see laws that protect people like Shaneen Allen. You would see laws that protect people from being prosecuted by their states for owning substances, for owning plants like marijuana. I think those are the kind of things you could push for on the national level if we're looking at sort of realistic solutions. But
because California has legal medical marijuana, however, on the federal level, that's still not recognized. However, under Obama and Holder, they're not going to prioritize those or go after those. However, they actually do go after the shops to shut them down. Makes not a lick of sense. So in a state where you can have medical marijuana and you have these God-given rights, not government-granted rights, these are in the Bill of Rights. It's just these are the things that are and cannot be taken away or infringed upon. It's a Second Amendment right to defend yourself. However, you can have medical marijuana in California, but on your CCW permit and on your purchase transfer information, it says that you can't, and it specifically has marijuana questions. Like I said, I don't hear many people talking about this at all. So I'm not necessarily expecting you to say, oh, well, interesting thing. 4 episodes ago, I talked to so-and-so, and we did an hour on this subject. But I would request that the next time you do have somebody and you're talking about marijuana policy, maybe you could bring it up. Or next time you do have a Second Amendment guy, maybe bring that up. Because I think asking for clarification on that is something that...
You mean just how it can be reconciled on a national level with how the states are... Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, it just, like I said, it just doesn't make sense because when you fill out the paperwork, it doesn't say, do you have a bottle of Jack Daniels in your home that could make you potentially violent in a drunken rage where you blacked out?
Do you have Viagra in your house? Like, I mean,
do you have
it's exactly as relevant to if you have marijuana. I mean,
do you have any SSRIs? Do you have any psychotropic drugs? Do you have any Xanax and stuff where these people go on like breaks with reality or you're sleepwalking and you don't know what's going on? And, you know, they say that a lot of these shooters have been under the influence of a lot of these psychotropic drugs.
I know a guy who, you know, the drug Soma. It's like a sleep aid drug, I guess.
Yeah.
He woke up in his car. He was sleep driving on Soma. He woke up in a drive-thru. Like he had like a dream, or in his dream he was hungry, and he like sleep drove to this drive-thru. I mean, it sounds funny, but that's dangerous. And he doesn't really remember doing it. He wasn't drunk or anything. He just was only on Soma.
So I mean, it's just
completely legal as long as you get that doctor's prescription.
See, and it's so weird that when it comes to guns, they're not going to ask you about these pharmaceutical drugs that you're taking. They're not asking you about your alcohol habits, and then they just want to throw that in there as like something. It boggles the mind. It makes no sense to me. So I just wanted to toss that out there, and for you and I to both stumble and stammer a little bit and go, I don't know. That doesn't make. Is that the way? I don't know. What would it mean if? I don't get it either. And maybe that's where we leave it today. Maybe it's just mentioning to people, you might want to start having these conversations with your local governments, and maybe on a federal level push for something, because those things to reconcile, it just doesn't make sense. And like you said, it's a lot like gay marriage. The weed thing, it's happening. You know, it's probably going to be smart to get out in front of this thing and.
I mean, stop resisting if you're against medical marijuana. Just stop. Resistance is futile, as they might say. Guess what, folks? We're winning this one. I mean, it doesn't mean relax and chill out, because people's rights are still being violated daily and based on marijuana. One more story I want to touch on real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Just because it's so blatantly awful. But it's something that occurred, I think, earlier this week. I'm just pulling up the article. That's what the ums are all about.
Whatever.
from lionsdelivery.com.
You went to the school of Barack Obama's speech writing and preparation.
I'm looking for my teleprompter right now.
Now let me be clear. Lions of Liberty. Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, but John Odermatt wrote about this earlier this week in edition of the Morning Roar, and basically this child, this 11-year-old child. In his school, he started to defend medical marijuana.
I saw this one. Tell me about it. I didn't have a chance to dig into it.
Yeah, so basically, I believe he was in a DARE class, and his mother is basically a cannabis oil activist in Kansas. She, promotes the use of cannabis oil to help for various medical ailments and that kind of thing. And Ben Swan, our buddy Ben Swan, did an interview with her. I believe also talking about this issue. She has successfully treated her own Crohn's disease with cannabis oil. So she has used it for legitimate medical reasons. But anyway, her son was in his school, and I guess he was saying something about, he was in a DARE class, and he was just defending the fact that there's medical use available, because the DARE program still says the same old crap. Drugs are bad, drugs are bad, drugs are bad. I mean, that's it. And then, this kid just wanted to bring up some relevant points about how medical cannabis can be used. And I guess this actually caused some sort of complaint to be filed somewhere.
Hold on. Let me back out. Let me make sure I have this right. So this kid's in school. You basically have a teacher up there.
Now, as I was saying, drugs are bad. You shouldn't do drugs. If you do them, you're bad. Because drugs are bad, okay? It's a bad thing to do drugs, so don't be bad by doing drugs, okay? That'd be bad. Drugs are bad, okay?
That's what was happening, right?
That's exactly right.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I think that was like the perfect thing to okay, so blah, blah, blah. It's like the wah, 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 wah. Drugs are bad, wah, wah. And then the kid's like, well, hold on. There's a lot of studies that have been proven that there's medical benefits to the cannabis oil and da-da-da-da. So he says that. Yeah.
And that's a problem for them. So basically, eventually, I'm just trying to see what... So they actually raided her home is what happened. And they found like some cannabis oil and stuff like that. And now they're basically attempting to take her son away. And she has a custody hearing coming, I think, next week. So, but the fact that there's even a hearing, the fact that the state has the power to take her son away, just because she possesses and advocates for this substance, which helps people medically, and apparently the son was knowledgeable of this, obviously, and he felt the need to speak out at school. 11-year-old kid, brave kid. He's speaking out against the false propaganda being displayed by the authority figures at his school. But that, of course, drew attention to his mother and his mother's use of the cannabis oil. So that has really drawn the ire of the police and the authorities, which is just terrible. There is a legal defense fund set up for her at GoFundMe that you guys can find. Her name is Her last name is Banda. I believe I gotta look up her first name. Shona Banda. So maybe look her up on GoFundMe if you want to help her out, because she's fighting to have custody of her child right now, who is being threatened to be permanently removed from her just for the fact that she has used cannabis oil to help her legitimate Crohn's disease.
Her name sounds like a new yoga technique.
It does, right?
What's her
like
name?
The next Star Wars character.
What's her name again?
Shona Banda.
Shona Banda. Okay. All right. Listeners, let us know. Does her name sound more like a new yoga technique or a new Star Wars character? Say it again.
Shona Banda.
Shona Banda. It's just terrible though. Like it's just
That's outrageous.
I mean in essence, Mark, that is why we do what we do, right? We see injustice, we see effed up things that are just wrong. And you know, on the flip side, I guess who are we to say what's right and wrong? But like, I don't know. You see something, you say something.
Reasonable human beings. That's who we are. I mean, if people aren't, some people might think morality is subjective and whatever, but I think that's BS, because there's a reason we all believe that murder is illegal, or except for murderers, or that murder is wrong, that stealing is wrong. Most of us believe that. This is a very objective. Morals are very objective if you really break them down, and it's objectively wrong to take a woman's child from her because she was using and advocating the use of cannabis oil. It's not a gray issue to me, and I'm sure it might be for other people. It obviously is, or it might be black on the side of it's obvious he should be taken away for a lot of people, and that's the kind of stuff we got to work on, because it's these sort of injustices between this kind of stuff, the no-knock rage you see. It's this kind of stuff that has inspired us to create Lions of Liberty, to do the Lions of Liberty podcast, to come on shows like yours and keep the conversation going, because until we change the hearts and the minds of the people, this stuff isn't going to just magically stop happening on its own. We need a full-scale movement to enforce the individual rights of people in this country, and it's not going to happen until most people, or at least a large majority of people, start to understand what those rights should be.
And we need to wake these statists up.
Wake them up, statists! Wake up!
All right.
Come get some heavy helping of dogma at lionsliberty.com. Just kidding. A healthy conversation.
No, get a healthy dosage of what's that lady's name? Dunkashay? What's her name?
Banda? Shonda Banda?
Shonda Banda? Get a heavy dosage of Shonda Banda karma. All right, I digress. Now I'm just being wacky. Yeah, check out lionsliberty.com. And okay, so you said you don't know when you're going to be on Caravan to Midnight. You'll know.
We
in a
have
little
not
bit.
settled on the date yet, but it'll be sometime in May or June, and of course I'll update you when I know exactly.
Yeah, update me, and then share it on our page. And if you guys want the update, you better do an update. Remind people on your page. That'd be lionsofliberty.com. Any other places you want to plug again? One more time.
Lionsofliberty.com, lionsofliberty.com/podcast for the full podcast archive. And look us up on iTunes. Just search Lions of Liberty, and you will find it. I'd love anyone who is interested in the show and interested in hearing more from me to subscribe to the show. Leave us a rating and review on iTunes, because that's how we boost the show up and get more eyes and ears on this thing, and that's what we're trying to do.
Excellent. Well, hey, Mark, thank you for joining us today. I know
Pleasure as always.
It was a challenge getting all of the the Google glitches I had on my side, and then the scheduling conflicts I had on my side, working and juggling 3 different guests today for 3 different segments. So I appreciate the flexibility. Good luck on your appearance on Caravan to Midnight. Keep up the good work over there at Lions of Liberty. Tell all the crew I said hello. And yeah, we'll be doing this again soon, man. I appreciate your time.
Always a pleasure, my man. Keep up the good fight.
All
and
right.
Keep living the dream.
Yes, keep living the dream, as only a statist could misunderstand. All right. So, for everybody out there in radio world, I appreciate you and I love you. And in saying that, I need to ask and request that you do these things. Check out our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. On the right-hand side, 3 things. What are they? TNAM radio link. Click play. That's where you listen live. When do we go live? Well, sometimes we go live whenever we feel like going live, but we'll send out updates on Twitter and Facebook. So you need to sign up, get your alerts from us. On Twitter, we're at American_media_. That's American_media_. On Facebook, you do a search for The New American Media with spaces in between and like the page. That's also over there at thenewamericanmedia.com. And finally, subscribe, youtube.com/The New American media. So make sure you check it out. We're going to be celebrating our 4-year anniversary real soon. Oh, I forgot to... Darn it. I totally forgot about libertarians in living rooms drinking liquor. I was supposed to talk to Mark about that because he has a special show, I think a 100th episode special coming up. Doggone it. But you may hear some more of our conversation in a little bit on that thing if we can schedule the details. So anyway, for everybody out there, really, I do appreciate you. I do love you. Keep seeking truth, challenging dogma, and having fun. My name's Brian Engelman, signing out for everybody here at the TNAM Radio Network. We'll talk again soon. Stay safe, make good decisions, have a lot of fun, and we'll talk again soon. Peace.
Hi, everybody. You're listening to Agree to Disagree with Brian Engelman, and this is John B. Wells reminding you that not only is Brian Engelman a cool guy, and not only is the newamericanmedia.com a very cool platform, but here's a cool idea for you, too. Are you alone? Not really. Do you like dogs? Do you like cats? You do. Of course you do. Everybody does. One or the other, maybe even both. You know, there are a lot of dogs and cats that are at shelters right now, and if somebody doesn't take them home, they're going to wind up euthanized. That's a nice way of saying they're going to be killed because there's simply not enough room. I guarantee it, the best dogs and the best cats, the best pets come from shelters. There's something about dogs and cats, they know. They know where they are. You walk through one of them, and certainly at least one is going to look at you and go, I wish you'd take me home. I'm in hell. Please take me out of here. It'll be the best thing that you ever did for your soul. You'll feel good about it. And not only that, but you have a friend for life. Doesn't matter if you got money, you don't have money. Well, it doesn't make any difference to a dog or cat. All they need is the sound of your voice and maybe even the stroke of your hand, and they're fine. Maybe a little food every once in a while. The sweetest sound that those pets ever hear is your voice. Think it over and adopt a cat or a dog from a local shelter today. I'm telling you, you'll be glad you did.